me romance. Read me romance. Read me romance. Read me romance. You could take a look in a book, that's fine. Or you could sit back, relax, and unwind and read me romance. Read me romance.
Welcome back, lady listeners.
Welcome back, lady listeners. Welcome to a new week at Read Me Romance. And we are super excited to have Leonor Soliz with us. She brought us a book called Now Us Again. She came, first of all, she was recommended to us a while ago by our amazing admin, Carla. You find her on Instagram, Carla is Reading. She does awesome like book recommendations and reviews and stuff. And she had actually was the first one I saw that talked about Leonor Soliz and talked about her books. And the first time I saw the covers, I was like, oh, yes, I love this, especially because the women are like curvy and thick, and it's just, they're so hot. And then I found out when we got Leonor on the podcast, I found out she designs her own covers. She does like all of them. And so
she illustrates that all?
Yeah, she does all that. And I was like, okay, so that's why they're so fucking hot. And that was one thing, I sent her the form or whatever about being on the podcast. And I was like, oh, if there's anything interesting or fun you want us to mention to our listeners, we'd love to. And she put that on there. And it says, I added it to the bottom of our thing. It says, fun fact, Leonora does her covers herself, including illustrations, because of how important showing off her curvy characters are to her. Besides just loving the process of doing it, she wanted to make sure like her characters were represented correctly. And so she did her own. And I'm just like, they're fantastic. And one of the ones she has, it's enemies to lovers, like romance. It's called Done and Done. And the girl on that is so fucking hot. And like she's got a huge ass. And I was like, yes. I was like, okay, all right, I'm here for this. Yes, the big booty ladies stand up. So I mean, there's just her covers are really fun and cute. And just, all of her stuff in general is just really pretty, and I love the aesthetic. And so she was amazing to work with and super, super sweet, of course. But so we'll talk about Leonora and all her stuff in a little bit, and everything to do with Now Us Again. But before that, there were a couple of things I wanted to mention. One thing that I wanted to talk about was I saw this posted on, can't remember I think maybe it was on Facebook, but an author that I'm mutuals with shared a post, and it was from Tia Fanning. And I don't know if that's an author or a reader, but I just screenshot it so I could remember to read it. But Tia Fanning said, "Dear readers, is there any way I can convince you to give Kobo Plus to try as a KU alternative? KU Kindle Unlimited. Besides being cheaper, they are author friendly. There is no exclusivity contracts for us, so we can so Tia is an author. Okay. So there's no exclusivity contracts for us, so we can put our books on a Kobo subscription and publish them on other platforms. Also, they are not penalizing authors for things out of their control, like pirating. They are not deleting whole author accounts over false complaints from trolls. They are not favoring traditional publishers who can be on KU and be wide over indie authors who must be exclusive to KU. They are not actively discriminating against romance authors, banning dark romance books for content while allowing the male-dominated horror genre to publish whatever they want.
They get to publish whatever they want.
Yes. I know it's so frustrating as an author, but I know a lot of people who hear this, who are listening to the podcast, we have thousands of listeners each week. And I know that a large majority use Kindle Unlimited. And that is because Amazon is easy. Everything's connected. It's one clickable, and all the authors you love are on there. And I totally understand that, but it is a really beneficial program. Kobo Plus is. It's $7.99 a month, and you should just go through and see if they have any of their authors that you're interested in. I know we're on Kobo and we're not on Amazon. So that's one advantage to, if you read Alexa Riley, it's going to be on Kobo versus you trying to find us in KU, because we'll never be in that. So like, it's a benefit to doing that program. But like she said, it is cheaper. There's a lot of benefits for authors being in the Kobo Plus program. So yeah, I think if you've ever thought about like making the switch out of KU or trying a different program or saving some money, this is one way to do it. Just go and check your authors. I know it's tough. It's tough to make that change as well, because of, there are some authors who are only in KU and they're only exclusive to that. But I see more and more and more authors rolling things out of KU now because
I've seen
of
that too. Yeah.
because of just the liability, of not only having all your eggs in one basket with KU, but that is your entire reading market is in KU. If you don't have any books outside of that genre, you can't grow your audience beyond that. So that's really tough for an author in their career. Like, to get into Kindle Unlimited is great if you're starting out and you want to find a reader base that's already there. And if you're a reader that you love reading romance and, you just want to try out all kinds of different things, Kindle Unlimited is a great program for that. I don't know that it's good long term, though.
I bet it would be good if you buy a lot of books out of KU and you have KU and you're still buying ones that aren't in KU. And let's say you buy us. We're already one book a month. That's $3. We're talking about what, $5 more?
Yeah.
That's just one other book. Instead of buying that book that's sold wide on Amazon, you could just get it from Kobo and it would cover the subscription on its own.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, it's tough to make that switch. And I understand it, especially from an ease of clickability, because Amazon, that's one of the things they have going is that everybody uses it. There's established authors that are already in it. You can go in and click one click and you're done. Kobo is a new program to get used to. And it is really hard to get people to use a new program when they're so used to that.
I used to be the same way, but now I use Apple. Now I'm going to look into Kobo after this because I didn't know all that was going on. But I use Apple sometimes, and I just like that I get different recommendations. Like I feel like some of my stuff is more organic from recommendations from Apple, where I feel like on Amazon, I'm targeted by them.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that because I do a lot on Apple as well. My big ones are Apple and Audible. That's all I use. And I know Audible is kind of a subsidiary of Amazon as well because that's the same thing. But with audiobooks, like I've been trying to make the app to the switch to Libby, where it's the through the library system, like their audiobooks on there. I've been really trying to like get on that, and books that I don't want to read right away that I can go on there and request, or if it's like something that's older and I want to read. Like my daughter and I listened to The Princess Bride the other day. We were coming back. We had to go to my in-laws and do some landscaping. We were on the way home. It was like a 3-hour drive back. And I put on The Princess Bride because I had never read that book. And that was an older one that I could get on there. So, there's benefits to that, and that's free. So, yeah, anyways, there's different ways to do it. And if, I don't know, it seems like I see more and more, I see authors that are struggling and having problems because all of their books are in KU and they're trying to grow their audience away from it because KU it's not as stable as it used to be. It's become more of a volatile investment. And, if you were talking to any sort of financial advisor, they would tell you, don't put all your money in one stock, that, you should diversify. And this is a way to do that. And I know that doesn't, that's hard to say that to readers because I'm a reader, it's hard to be like, well, who cares? I'll just consume it how I want to consume it. And, but there is, there's an argument to be had about ethically consuming, so I don't know. I just wanted to offer this as an option. If you have considered making the switch, if you do want an alternative to KU, the Kobo Plus, just check it out and see what you think. So, even if it's for a month. So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox now. And I had posted something to Threads. It was like yesterday or the day before. I'd posted about if you have purchased a pirated copy off of Amazon. Did we talk about that on here? Did we cover that on the podcast when we talked about like pirated books on Amazon when people have loaded our books, how you have to ask for a refund? Have we talked about that?
Oh yeah, I think we have. That you
Okay,
can get a refund.
Yeah, I can't remember if we discussed that. Yeah, so a lot of our books get pirated to Amazon because we're not on Amazon. And so it's easier for them to do it because there's nothing they can compare it to. So like, it's not like there's another book with the same name and title and entire book on there that they're doing it. So it's harder to catch people that do it on there because we're not on Amazon. But it happens to us like weekly, multiple times. And if you purchase accidentally, it's not your fault at all. But if you go on Amazon and you see, oh, Alexa Riley has a book in Kindle Unlimited, and you download it, or if you buy it, that money goes to Amazon. And if Amazon pulls that pirated book, Amazon keeps that money unless you know to ask for a return or a refund. And most people don't know to ask to do it. So I shared that on my Threads the other day where I was just like, hey y'all, heads up, by the way, Amazon is keeping all this money from these pirated books. So if you want your money back, you got to ask for it. So that's just a heads up to be aware of that too. That was something else. I had seen several people mention pirated books recently on Amazon, and I was just like, oh, this is just, it's rampant,
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's anything else to be done about it for the moment, but I don't know. All we can do is share what we know, and that's something you can kind of watch your back on. So yeah, those were the top things on my list to discuss today because I was hot about it. But the other thing was, I mentioned the listening to The Princess Bride. So did you know it was a book? Like it was actually, but I didn't realize. I guess maybe I thought it was a story, but I didn't realize it was like a legit book.
Yeah, I thought it was just a movie. My husband's favorite books.
Really?
Like he remembers it from like a kid. I think he has some kind of copy of it.
Oh, yeah. I love that. So I listened to the audio of it, and it's Rob Reiner who is narrating it, the director. And he had an interesting thing at the beginning of it where the book starts off like the movie, but instead of being in the 80s when the kid's sick and the grandpa's coming to visit, it's in like 1940. And so the kid is sick, and his dad comes in and reads him The Princess Bride. So the kid loves it. It's so amazing. And when he grows up, and it's his son's 10th birthday, I think, he gifts his son this book. And so he gives it to his son, and he's so excited. And the next day is like, oh, did you read it? Like, what about this that happens in chapter 2 and this that happens in chapter 5, blah, blah, blah. And the son's like, oh, I just couldn't really get into it, and he's like super disappointed. He's like, oh man, I hate that. Like, it was my favorite book growing up. My dad read it to me all the time. Like, that's really a shame. And his wife pulls him to the side, and he's like, look, it was just really heavy, like the political unrest and all this stuff. And he's like, what? And so the guy ends up, he's like, what are you talking about? And he goes and he reads the book, and he realizes his dad was abridging. Yeah, he was editing as he was reading. He was taking out all this because originally The Princess Bride is about political unrest in Florence and like how these countries are at war because Buttercup is kidnapped to be murdered and start a war. But the whole book is really about the war. And so like he didn't realize, he was like, well, I guess my dad was just a romantic at heart. And he left out all the bullshit and read him the good stuff. So this guy, he decided it was like it must have been in the 70s at that point, or maybe it was the 60s, 70s, however old he was at that point. But he decided he got permission to do an abridged version of the book. So the book that we listen to and that the movie is based on is the abridged version of The Princess Bride. with all the political bullshit taken out of it, which I thought was so interesting. I had no idea. And so Rob Reiner is narrating this audio and he explains all this at the beginning. And I'm listening to it. I'm like, wow. And my 10-year-old or my almost 10-year-old, she's in the back seat and she's like, what's happening? Like she has no idea. She's listening with me and she's like, I don't understand anything. And I was like, I'll explain it later, you know? And she was like, just get to the story, get to the good stuff. But yeah, so it was really cool. But until and this is a spoiler if you haven't read the book, but at the end of it, Wesley and Buttercup kind of leave, but the magic potion that was given to Wesley to like, you know, like wake him up again.
Mm-hmm.
It only lasts for like an hour. And after that, they don't know what's supposed to happen. They think he's going to die again. And the potion was only for an hour or 40 minutes or whatever it was to like get him in there and get Buttercup out. And then he'll be dead after that. So at the end of it, they're leaving, they're running away. And Inigo is like, his stomach's cut open. He's bleeding to death. Fezzik like has him, and like Wesley and Buttercup are going, and they're just running, and the entire army of like Gilderoy is coming after them, and then the book just ends. And I was just like, wait a minute, that was not the love story I was sold when I was a kid. Like, what the fuck happened? But they said, so Rob Reiner came in at the end of it, and he's like, you know, I like to think my dad, he's reading from the author, you know, obviously, but the author said, he was like, I like to think my dad was a romantic because he gave me the happily ever after. And he said, and I like to think the original author might have been more of a cynic, where there's just an obscure ending and you don't know what happens. And he was like, me, I'm more in the middle. And I feel like, you know, that the reality is that either could have happened. He was like, you know, but I kind of like to hope that it was a good ending. And so like, it does leave it sort of obscure. But when we got home, from like my in-laws, I was like, well, let's watch the movie because I think that has a better ending. And it did. And she was like, okay, yeah. So I was like, we'll just pretend that that's the ending that was in the book then. So but yeah, it was God. Like I know I had no idea, and it was like so much better. You know, but the book is, the abridged version of the book is exactly like the movie, like verbatim, like beat for beat, word, like all the phrases are the same. Like, it's great. So, I mean, there's like maybe one or two things that are a little bit different, but nothing that would alter the movie.
I love that the dad like took things. That's just so like adorable. Like,
what a sweet thing, right? To like have read the book and know like, he's not going to care about any of this. Let's make it a better version.
I'm like the opposite of that parent. I'm like, Isabel, listen, Peyton, what happened in my trial today?
You're telling them about the murder trial you've been watching for weeks.
They all know. I like Peyton's in the car in the morning. I'm like, court's about to start. This is what's going on.
This is who we're interviewing today. You're ready.
Sometimes
he'll
ask me. He'll be like, what happened with such and such? I'm like, oh, you wouldn't believe it.
You're you're the 12th man is what it is, you know, like when they talk about on the football field, you know, when you have 11 players, but the crowd cheering's the 12th man. That's you, like talking about this is who we're interviewing today. This is what's going on. You're taking notes.
God.
I love it. So both parents are equally important. Okay. But that was all my notes and my updates. I did want to say, for Alexa Riley, we had our taboo releases. Make sure you check those out. And then we have a new book that's coming out soon. It's called Wild Card. It's the third book in the Love is a Gamble trilogy. So it's the third and final one in that story. So make sure you check it out.
This will drop Tuesday? Yeah, I can have it for you guys. I'll have it for you guys Tuesday.
Okay. All right.
I got the proof back today, and I just need to finish up the cover. So, yeah.
Sweet. So, yeah. Okay. So that'll be ready to go then. So be on the lookout for Wild Card. And I also wanted to mention that we are writing a book right now, and I think we're both in love with it.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's that's one thing we've written notes back to each other about. We're like, it's not coming easy, but it's fun.
But I'm always, when I'm down, I'm like, okay. Or I'm like, when I was on the treadmill when you finished yours today.
Oh, wow.
And
Really?
I paused it and I was like, because I know I'm going to have to think about my part. So I
Yeah,
paused the treadmill and I sat down and I read it and got back on. That's how much I was like, okay, I want to see what happened now.
Yeah, I'm excited to read your chapter. I got your email where you were finished with yours. And I was like, ooh, maybe I can read it before we record. And then I got busy and couldn't do it. But I'm like, ooh, I'm anxious to know what's going to happen next. I really like this story. But
it's just different. It's really different for us.
Yeah, it's a little bit dark. It's a little bit darker. It's kind of out of pocket. Like this guy is in.
He's out of pocket.
Yeah, for sure. He's in an insane asylum, and she's a nurse there. And we've never written anything like this before. And I'm kind of surprised that we haven't, because you and I both like this kind of shit. So I don't know why we haven't. Maybe this is a natural progression. We finally got to it. It's all your trial stuff. All your trial
talk. And all your long mysteries, we're going to end up morphing into something else.
I know. We're going to get some, it's going to be dark and fucked up at some point because of this. But yeah, so that'll be out soon. And in a little while. We're still writing it, but it's been really fun and we've been really enjoying it. So yeah. And then update on the book boxes. We did get proofs this week for the paperbacks. They're not quite ready yet.
She says she's got it fixed. She said, I guess I can tell you later. But you are going to get the boxes on Friday. You're going to get the box approved.
Oh my God. I cannot wait to see them. They're going to be so fun.
Either. I want to see it.
I know.
Because I tried to do it a little differently than the years before. I played with it a little more. So I'm curious to how it turned out or if I fucked it up.
No, I'm sure it looks that great. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. But the book boxes, these boxes might be my favorite we've ever done. With all the stuff that's in them, I am so flippin' excited.
And I really like the covers of the books. It's a different bold color. It's deeper. I'm like, I just, at first when I see it, I was like, I don't know. I was like, actually, that might be really cool. But to see it done, I was like, I like this color.
Yeah, I do too. Seeing them in person was really cool because it's bold. It's a little different. It's darker, but it's still summery. It's, it's really fun. I think they're going to be cool. I think you guys are going to love them. So just be on the lookout for news about that coming soon as well. So I think that's all our updates for Read Me Romance.
And all of you guys are off for summer. You probably have lots of time. So don't forget that there's a ton, 100, if not more. There is more audiobooks on Patreon.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You guys can listen to. So hop over there.
Somebody mentioned that on Threads earlier this week too. She said, she was like, for the love of God, I pay for Spotify family premium account. She was like, give me more than 15 hours of audiobooks a month or something like that. So Spotify has audiobooks.
You only get 15 hours?
Yeah, but it limits you to, and that's a month. So you can't even get through a whole book, I think, depending on your subscription. And it's even from the lowest ones, I think only 10, and the top one might be 15, or I'm sorry if I'm getting those exact numbers wrong, but it's somewhere in that general area. And I was like, what the fuck? So, but I will say, if you have a Spotify subscription, these are free audiobooks and they don't fall within those hour limits. So you can literally listen to audiobook after audiobook after audiobook on this podcast on Spotify, and it won't count towards your audiobook limits. So I just think that's good to know.
Patreon just has all the ones that have fallen off over the years.
Yeah,
because we can only hold so many on Spotify and all the podcast places. So as they drop on, we put them on. There's actually a gap you have too, where they're just nowhere, and then they get loaded to Patreon.
Yeah. So it's good to know, if you want older audiobooks and episodes, and it's just the audiobooks that have been loaded to Patreon, all of the ads and everything else have been taken out.
Yeah, it's just pure book from start to finish.
So you get tons and tons on there. So make sure you check that out. All right. Well, let's talk about Leonor. Leonor Soliz. Leonor wrote her first meet cute at 8 years old and never really stopped. Her stories are cozy and fun, low conflict, slow burn books that will make you swoon and will reward you with a great spice. With a healthy dose of humor, these stories guarantee a happily ever after to her plus size and multicultural characters. Leonor is a Latina living in Canada, working as a therapist during the day and fitting as much writing into her life as she can. She's also a multi-crafter, trying her hand at watercolor, jewelry, sewing, and anything else that strikes her fancy. She makes her own covers too. I love that she put that on there. Excuse me. And today's audio that you're going to listen to is called Now Us Again. And kissing my high school crush goodbye has haunted me for more than a decade. When I return to my hometown and life throws me right into his arms, it's like we were never apart. He's changed, but only in the best ways. He's bigger, sexier, and gazes at me and my curves like he won't let me go this time. Gone is the quiet, lanky boy I fell for during lazy study sessions in the library. We may be passing notes again, but he makes it clear he wants to take up right where we left off. We have waited too long for a second kiss, but this may be the chance we never got to figure out what comes next if we let ourselves fall at last. Love it. The book you're about to listen to, Now Us Again, is in connection with Yours Forever. It's Yours Forever is a marriage of convenience, billionaire, small town romance. The characters in the book are mentioned in Now Us Again. The small town of Laguna Island features in both too, as well as the free novella she offers to her newsletter subscribers. So if you subscribe to her newsletter, you can get the book Return to Love. It's a friends to lovers road trip tropes, and that's free. And then anyone who subscribes to Leonor Soliz newsletter will get Return to Love, as well as an ebook copy of Now Us Again. So she's giving away the ebook version of the audio you're going to listen to. She's giving that away in her newsletter subscription. So you sign up if you want the ebook version of this book, just sign up for it and you'll get it. So she's also releasing a third book. It's the third book in her Cozy Latina Billionaire series. It's the third book out of 4 total. So this one's called Yours Forever as book 2, and Yours Finally is the third one. And it is a brother's best friend romance with a plus size multicultural couple. And that one comes out in July. So if you listen to Now Us Again and you love it and you want something new, she's going to have Yours Finally out in July. And then her giveaway this week is she is giving away an ebook copy of each of the 2 published books in the Cozy Latina Billionaire series, including the one discussed in Now Us Again, for those wanting to see Max and Eva's story. So make sure you check that out. I know that's a lot of info, but we'll have everything down in the show notes as usual. And we'll also have everything on our website. Make sure you join Leonor's newsletter. Subscribers get a first look at everything, plus free stories, deleted scenes. She does fan art and characters on there. And she's also super active on Instagram. That's where I follow her. She is just so fun. Is also just always posting up really cool stuff about her books and what she's got coming, and just romance books in general. So she's got great recommendations as well. So make sure you follow her. And then I think the other thing she wanted me to mention was the Cozy Latina Billionaire series is being made into audiobooks to be released later this year. So if you want more in audio, she's got more coming. So sorry, I feel like I threw everything in the kitchen sink at you guys. But like I said, it'll all be down in the show notes. It'll be on the website and social media. So, and everything will be clickable for you to find it.
All right, let's send you guys in.
Let's do it.
We'll see you on the other side.
Bye.
This is Now Us Again by Leonor Soliz. Read for you by Ramona Master. 1. Elisa. When I left my hometown for college, I never thought I would return. After 12 years, life surprised me with a plot twist, and I officially moved back to Laguna Island. It was all because my wealthy boss fell in love with one of my old high school friends. As a result, he invested so much in Laguna Island that he needed a local project manager. As soon as he learned I happened to be from the town and knew his wife Eva personally, he gave me a raise and a relocation package.
Max liked to hold meetings at his wife's cafe. Rushing out with a to-go tray full of coffees on my way back to town hall was a natural consequence. Being several steps away from the cafe and realizing I'd forgotten my bag was not. I turned and immediately crashed into a large chest. Oomph. The person managed to infuse depth, surprise, and even a bit of an impudent tone in that one sound. I gasped. "I'm so sorry." The words tumbled out of me without a conscious thought. "Did I spill on you?" Instinctually, I checked their legs and torso for signs of wet spots. I didn't find any. Instead, my brain cataloged nice shapely legs in black jeans and a simple white shirt under a tan-colored moto jacket. No signs of spillage, but lots of signs of an attractive mask. A flutter of recognition feathered up my body, like it remembered what it was like to be attracted to someone, and that vague sense of hope that one of these days, I would have a meet cute and fall desperately in love again. I chased that flutter up this person's body, delighted to see a thick, natural beard and eyes that I... "Elisa?" he said. Eyes that I recognized. My center of gravity did a quick somersault in my body. Bruno? Max, my boss, came out of the cafe. "Elisa, you forgot your bag." I balanced the coffees in one hand and hooked the offered purse with my free elbow. Max studied Bruno and I, standing in front of each other, awkwardly staring, somewhere near the cafe's front door. "Hello," Max offered his hand to Bruno. "I'm Maximiliano Errázuriz. Pleased to meet you." Bruno shook his hand. "I'm Bruno Campos. Happy to meet you. We'll actually work together. I just got a job with the town. Daniel has mentioned you." "Oh, you must be the new architect." "I am. Yes." He glanced at me. "That's why I'm back in town. With all the changes I heard you're bringing, it's no wonder why I was needed here." My eyes switched back and forth between the two men. My stomach flipped, because if Bruno was going to work with Daniel, and I worked for Max as his project manager, Max gave Bruno a humble shrug. "Many people are coming back these days. Elisa is too. Perhaps you know each other?" "We do. We went to school together. With Eva," I added. "Another reunion!" Max's grin was friendly and inviting as ever. "Wow! Well, I'll let you reconnect. My wife awaits me. Come say hi to her, Bruno. She'll be happy to see another old friend." "I will. In fact, I was just coming to get a coffee and say hello." Bruno smirked. But then Elisa crashed into me. I knew that smirk. He used to give it to me anytime my clumsy disposition came to play. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't hide the smile curling my lips. "I'll see you inside then. Elisa, I'll send you the email I promised right away." "Of course, Max. Talk to you later." Bruno and I watched Max walk back into the cafe. When Bruno's gaze landed on me again, a tremor walked up my insides. Of all the times I imagined seeing Bruno again, I never expected it would have such a forceful impact on my biological functions. "Hey." Bruno's voice came out breathy, like a forgotten thought. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Now that we were alone, all I could do was study every new line on his face. This glorious beard he couldn't have grown back in high school, and the cool haircut he sported. Longer hair on top, combed back, and kept there by some sort of magic. Between that and his clothes, he looked casual and stylish and incredible. So different from the lanky teen I had last seen. Not that it had been an impediment to having fallen utterly in love with him back then. "Your hair is different." He lifted a hand toward me, but interrupted the movement in the next breath. He dug his hands in his pockets and gazed at me. His eyes traveled all over my face, as if tracking all the changes since the last time we met, too. A mirror to what I had done a mere second before. I smiled. Yours is too. You look older. His mouth took on a rueful slant. I was going to say you look much more stylish, but sure, older, too. I studied him again, from the light brown skin visible despite his thick beard, down to his body. Not lanky at all, much fuller, maybe even with a bit of a belly under his shirt. I lifted my eyes at him again and focused on the safest place. I waved my hand over my face. Who knew you'd ever grow such a fierce beard? He chuckled. I don't really have an explanation beyond the fact that I don't think I'd finished developing the last time we saw each other. No. The last time we'd been together, we'd kissed in a rushed goodbye. Faced with the reality that our choice of colleges would send us to opposite ends of the country the next day. So, you came back to work for the town? I asked. He nodded. Remember Joel? He reached out. Told me if I ever wanted to come back, this was the time. So now I'm part-time with Daniel for all the new local developments while I grow my private portfolio. Talk about coincidences. I cocked my head. I've been working for Max for a few years. He ended up moving here, and one thing led to another, and now I'm back too. I never thought I'd see you again, Bumblebee. His voice rumbled between us. I took a slow, deep breath. I never thought I'd hear that ridiculous nickname again. What can I say? He shrugged, a smile tilting his lips. The fact you almost spilled something on me again brought it right back to me. I snorted. Back in high school, our friendship had started when we sat close to each other in the library, and I spilled water all over him. Completely embarrassed, I tried to help him dry up, and ended up going way higher on his thighs and general lap area than I should have. He thought he was smart back then. Due to my bumble with the water, and considering how social I was, this was a supposedly cute thing to call me. Of course, I complained the whole time. I didn't spill anything this time, though. I arched an eyebrow. And I hope you don't start calling me that when we're in meetings together. He crossed his arms. No rings on his left hand, but that didn't mean much these days. He could still be partnered up, even if not married. We're going to work together? He asked. I work for Max. I'm helping him handle all his local projects, including the ones with the town. I see. He frowned. From the library back in school to the beach that last summer, now to town hall. I nodded. Who would have thought? Who would have thought indeed? We stared at each other for a few heartbeats, making time to adjust to this new reality. One where we were back in each other's lives. When are you starting work? I asked. He rubbed his lips together. Monday. Bonfire week. I'm planning on going with Ren and Pri. I'll be with Joel and Amy. So many people we used to hang out with. And now us. Again. His grin stretched slowly. I'll see you around, Bumblebee. I took a few steps back, and so did he, the distance between us growing. Our eyes remained locked, a smile on his face that echoed mine. Don't crush into anyone else, his voice carried, overcoming the space separating us. Don't be jealous if I do. Don't tell me what to do. With a wide grin on my face, I waved back and turned. I left the cafe's storefront with fast steps. 1,000 memories fleeting through my mind, and one big question. 2. Bruno. I started work that Monday, excited for the future. On one hand, this job was a great way to transition into life in Laguna Island, and I could see myself in it for a long time. On the other, in the much shorter term, Elisa. What an opportunity that lay at my feet. After years of thinking of her as a dream, I still carried with me. She had materialized in front of me with no warning, literally. not many people got to say they crashed into their memories. During my onboarding meetings, I took every opportunity to learn the ins and outs of my job, as well as how it intersected with Elisa's. Thankfully, there would be no HR or power dynamic issues if we eventually were to take the collision on the sidewalk into something else. Something of the romantic variety. Seeing her again after more than a decade brought all my regrets forward. It also whispered about possibilities. This may be the time I got to do all the things I didn't get to do as a teen. That's why I searched for her in the town hall building as soon as I got the chance. Discovering that her office was across from mine seemed like destiny. I checked out her space only to find it empty. No surprise there. From what I learned, the office was a nice gesture to Max, since he had donated so much money. She needed a place to work from, and the town had offered this place for her. Since she met with her boss elsewhere half the time, and I only worked there part-time, I had to get used to the idea that I probably wouldn't see her much. It didn't mean I couldn't make the most of the opportunity. I grabbed a sticky note, wrote on it, and put it on her dark screen. "Hey there, neighbor. Come say hi, don't be a stranger. Bruno." The next day, I found a reply on my screen. "Are you going to pass notes to me in class again? It feels like it. Elisa." I snorted and wrote another one. It's just one of the many things I remember with fondness. B. Focused on work, as I was a couple of hours later, I didn't see her get into her office. I realized she had seen my note when she knocked on my open door and leaned on the frame. She smiled. "What else do you remember fondly?" She was still stunning. She dressed differently, with more of a business casual look than I ever saw her in. The high-waisted burgundy pants hugged her generous hips and plush lower belly, and a loose white blouse drew my eyes to the V-neck and her pretty face. I leaned back in my chair, arched an eyebrow, and played with the pen in my hand. Where do I begin? A random memory works. Let's see. I stared at the ceiling as if I didn't have 100 different moments invade my mind. There was this time you had to do this presentation in science class, and you chose to talk about different theories for the birth of the universe. It was really interesting. She gave me an incredulous, amused look. And you remember that fondly? It had been one of the few classes we shared in high school. She had radiated excitement rather than boredom, and had grinned to the class like this was her element. For once, I paid close attention to a classmate's presentation. It was the first time I properly noticed her. "Well," I said, "I really, really love space." Back then, I knew her in passing, of course. Difficult not to in a small town. But she had a tight friend group I wasn't part of, and we hadn't spent significant time together in the same room. I hadn't had an opportunity to gaze at her, see how her eyes lit up in excitement, or to discern how, when she looked at me, my insides went haywire. "I do too." She lifted the sticky note she still held in her hand. "I like these. Old school, but cute. Keep them up, okay?" I didn't need to be told twice. That night, I left another note on her screen. I also remember a dress you used to wear a lot. It was blue with polka dots. You looked cute. A reply waited for me when I returned from a meeting. "That's why I wore it so often." I smirked and looked up at her closed door. The automatic answer I wanted to write next didn't come as a shock. I wanted to flirt with her, test the waters, tell her that the dress and how it showed off her legs haunted my nights back then. Imagining her in the dress now had the potential to do the same. If I kept passing notes with her, I was at risk of putting us in the same situation we were in during high school. I could see it a bit too easily. Us working in the same building, passing each other like ships in the night, She being busy with all the friends and extracurriculars, her own job and working team, and me busy with my own. Long stares at each other, and quiet moments in the library, the town's public works office, when no one else was around. I frowned and wrote another sticky note. When are you going to the cafe next? I'll try to join you for a coffee run. I wasn't 18 anymore, worried that she was out of my league, and that we would be too far away after the summer ended. I could do much better this time. I put the note on her door and waited. I heard you wanted to walk to the cafe with me, Elisa said from my door. I lifted my eyes at her. I pretended not to be affected by the way her blouse draped her chest and how it hid at the waist of a sexy pencil skirt. The tight garment and how it hugged her hips, even more clearly than the pants the day before, might be my undoing. I gulped. Give me 5 minutes and I can walk with you. Town Hall was part of the Civic Square, about 6 blocks away from the Central Plaza. The cafe occupied one of the corners of the Central Square by Main Street. We echoed the treks so many people did daily. Students took this route often, as the school was in the square, but the place to be after class was the Central Plaza. Strolling down the same sidewalks as when we were younger had a different feel this time. The breeze playing around us whispered that I better make the most of it. So how did Max convince you to come back to Laguna Island? I asked. You haven't spent a lot of time with Max yet, have you? Not much, actually. Except for when you ran into me last week. Daniel talks about him a lot, though. Max has a big personality and tends to get what he wants eventually. In my role within his team, I often ended up hearing where he was. He traveled so much that I didn't see him too often, but we worked closely enough. It was a shock when I learned he had moved to Laguna Island to live with his wife. Love at first sight, he said. With Eva in Vegas, as I've heard. Precisely. Anyway, 6 months into it, he had invested so much into businesses here and projects in town. He needed a project manager to help run things. It was a promotion for me to be in charge of a chunk of his businesses, so I shamelessly used my history with this place to get it. He didn't even make it hard. As soon as he heard I had grown up here and I knew his wife, the job was mine. I chuckled. So coming back wasn't something you were actively looking for. You wanted a promotion. Yeah, but coming back wasn't something I was against either. Or I wouldn't have. Headstrong as always, then. It hasn't changed? Why would that change? It's one of my best traits. I smiled. We strode past buildings and shops I had known well. Every facade showed the years since I last laid eyes on them. Of course, I said. Took you far, right? And close. Back to a place that could be my home again. What about you? I left Laguna Island not knowing where I would end up. By the time I became an architect, I had made a life in Toronto. So, was it hard to move back? Hard how? You basically had to cross the continent to come back here. If you had to move with a partner and family, for example... I laughed. Are you asking if I'm single? The possibility advanced through my chest with the power of an ocean tide. If that's what she was asking, then chances were she was on the same page as me. I don't know if I asked anything about that exactly, she tried. I chuckled. I think you're asking me if I'm single. Sure, if you like the idea, let's pretend I'm asking that. Are you single? I am. You? I have been for a bit. I was in a long-term relationship, but we broke it off. I figured from your posts on social media. We crossed a street and walked past the old bookstore. A smile remained on my lips. Possibilities shuffling in my mind as swift as a deck of cards. Are you on social media? She asked. You never post anything. I didn't know if you were there much. I'm an unapologetic lurker. I think I got a like from you once. I smirked. I know the time you mean. I panicked when I realized, But then I thought it would be even weirder if I unliked it. I didn't know if you'd gotten a notification already and all the fun stuff. Why would you panic? Because we didn't talk after... I lost my words. The memory of the kiss took over. How on that bonfire night, when most people had left, we awkwardly said goodbye. How she walked away, and at the last second, I took her hand, brought her to me, and kissed her. How after the kiss, she looked up at me with a sad smile. How she said, "I'll remember this," then gave me another kiss and left me, standing in the sand. After graduation, she offered. Yes, after graduation. We walked in silence for a while. Pressure built as we hopped onto the last block. We had a short distance left before we reached the coffee shop. "Why didn't we stay in touch, do you think?" she asked. The clouds parted, giving us warm sunlight for once. I stole several glances her way, never stopping our stride. We were young. Being so far apart to do what, date? Even though we'd barely see each other? I thought we could have stayed in touch, even if not to date. But we didn't. Seemingly half lost in her thoughts, Elisa reached for the cafe door. I did too. I wrapped my fingers around hers, and we pulled at the same time. It brought us close. I collided with her, her shoulder to my chest, our faces aligned. We hovered, together at the door, unmoving. My eyes dropped to her mouth. "We're in touch now," I said. She sucked in a breath. Her lips remained open, now somewhat slack. They looked soft. If I kissed her again, it would feel even better this time. I lifted my eyes. Her pupils dilated. "But there are ways to be closer," I added. "Bruno, Electricity crackled through the points where we touched. It magnetized us. The iron in my blood rushed to her, recognizing her call and wanting to join her. My heart, like it had forgotten the decade apart, was ready to follow. We had the bonfire coming up again, only 2 nights ahead. It was almost poetic that it could be the time to start what I had never wanted to see end. "You have a meeting." I retreated, for now. "You can go first." T-minus 55 hours, give or take. Then I would know if we both wanted the same thing. She blinked a few times, orienting herself back to the present. "Elisa!" Max called. She and I turned to the man hovering near the door. A smirk slanted his lips, and his hands were deep in his slack pockets. The general look made him seem irreverent, and if the things I'd heard were true, that was on brand for him. "Yes?" Elisa stepped into the cafe. "I'm not late, am I?" I followed her and stood close to her. I went as far as to put my hand behind her back. "That depends." Max's eyes moved between Elisa and I. "If you plan to have a coffee date before the meeting, then you should rush." She stole a glance at me. Not a real coffee date." "Not this time." I shook my head. "Just a pretend one, but I did come for coffee. Can I buy you one, Bumblebee?" I stepped closer to the counter where I said hi to Eva and ordered a couple of hot drinks. "Bumblebee?" Max asked Elisa behind me. "He's going to get ideas," Eva muttered in my direction, humor in her eyes. "Please forget that Bruno called me that," she said to her boss. Max snorted. "Unlikely." They both came near me, waiting for Elisa's coffee. "Then please don't repeat it," she added. "Darling," Max said in his wife's direction, "how successful were you in getting me to stop calling you darling?" Eva sighed. "I failed, evidently." "But you grew to like it. You even call me darling half the time these days." "Doesn't mean you should be calling your employee by a high school nickname." She arched an eyebrow in Max's way. Absolutely correct, as always, Max said. That's a nickname only I can use, I think. I paid for the coffees and offered one of them to Elisa. There's history to it, you know? Which you won't tell in front of my boss, I'm sure. Elisa turned to Max. It has to do with how I can sometimes be a little clumsy. That's more than you need to know. I can smell a good story from light years away, Max said, but I'll respect your wishes. As will I. I leaned down to kiss Elisa on the cheek. I'll see you later. I waved bye to Eva and Max and made for the door. They thought they were being inconspicuous, but I heard them clearly anyway. He's changed, Eva said. Would you say it was in a good way? I think so, Elisa replied. But something tells me I don't know the half of it yet. I smiled and left the cafe with a plan taking shape in my mind. 3. Elisa. Bonfire night was a time to catch up with friends. The town came together to celebrate the high school graduates, most of whom still left Laguna Island in search of a college education. I would take part in the event and take the opportunity to be part of my old community. But it wasn't the main thing on my mind. That morning in the office, another sticky note waited for me. Bright yellow on the dark computer screen, with a blocky print I easily recognized as Bruno's. Can I kiss you tonight? B. I walked onto the beach and searched for my friends. People I hadn't seen in years said hi to me. Some waved, some welcomed me back. But I couldn't stop thinking about those words. Bruno hadn't been around the office when I was, and we didn't get a chance to talk. Not that I knew how to answer his question, beyond giving him a simple, yes, you can. The not-a-date coffee run a couple of days before was all I needed to want that kiss. I craved that kiss. Even the memory of our moment at the door, when I wondered if he would kiss me right then and there, and the thought had rocked me on my heels, left me with tingles all over, like my body had woken up from slumber and said, I know you. I want you. I had missed that feeling. With Bruno around, leaving me sticky notes announcing he'd try to kiss me, it roared. For him to be the first person I found among the crowd seemed like destiny. His lips took on a playful smirk. Fancy seeing you here. Hello there. I tried to hide my smile, but I doubted I was successful. Didn't see you in the office today. I was only there for a few hours, and you weren't there at the time either. We stood in front of each other, our eyes locked. Our long gaze was charged with a challenge. Yes, I read the sticky note. I told him with my stare. Yes, I know you're waiting for an answer. You have changed, haven't you? Was what I said instead. I would hope so. I'm more than a decade older than when we last saw each other. The question is, do you like this new version? I think so. It's refreshing. Decisive. Good. Then you know what I want to do. And you may want it too. I do. His smirk grew into a smile. Good. He dug his hands in his jacket pockets. From where I stood, the material looked like an alluring shade of red wine suede. My fingers tingled with the desire to touch, feel its texture, and the solid body under it. I had to forcibly stop myself from batting my eyelashes. I have to go find Ren, but we'll meet again later, right? Yeah, we're all probably going to end up together. You all and Joel, Amy, and I. Afterwards, maybe I could walk you home? Butterflies took flight in my stomach. I smiled. I'd like that. Is that a yes, then? To the kiss? Good gods. When I broke up with my ex, I had said I wouldn't date again until I felt something like I felt for Bruno all those years ago. It had been a risk. I often wondered if the intensity of my feelings back then had to do more with the nature of adolescence than any kind of lasting feeling. Maybe I had idealized the whole thing and had gotten lost in the fantasy of it. Now, Bruno was in front of me and I felt it all over again. Waiting to feel that again had been the right move, because it had given me a chance with Bruno himself. My feelings hadn't been an illusion. They reverberated into our present, thick in my veins. I nodded and took a step back. It's a yes. Anticipation. Twisting and powerful, taking over my insides. I took another step back. The grin on my face had to be the flirtiest smile I had ever put on. Another step back. He gave me a look full of want, and it echoed inside of me. All of my senior year of high school condensed into a single week. I turned and tried to set my mind to finding my friends, but couldn't. Bruno took my hand, pulled me back to him, and pressed his lips to mine. Just like that last bonfire night. My hands landed on his chest. My heart flew forward, ready for more. My lips relearned the feeling of his mouth, his soft lips, and the added tickling sensation of his beard. His warm hand cupped my face, and I melted into it. If just the touch of his lips could make my body liquefy like wax to a flame, what would happen when we did more? Because I wanted more. Stat. Except he broke the kiss. I almost went in for more, but his thumb caressed my cheek, and I opened my eyes. He gazed into me. You said yes, so why wait? A soft, slow smile took over my mouth. Let's not wait again. We finally get to know what happens next. He nodded with a grin mirroring my own. I turned to finally go meet my friends, but nearly stumbled in the sand. See you soon, Bumblebee. I stood in the sand surrounded by my old friends. The summer night was cool, but that wasn't a deterrent. Rain was the only thing that could ruin bonfire night, and if we were lucky, the heavily clouded skies would hold back. Bruno hadn't found Joel and Amy, so he joined Ren, Ale, Daniel, and I instead. I sipped my beer and studied him. He stood right next to me and watched Ale tell a story. As was tradition, the graduating class had run off the school grounds sometime during the last month of class. We had done our own escape more than a decade before. Ale laughed as she recounted the event. And then I had to pull Ren and force her to run with us out of school. We may be twins, but not even a well-esteemed tradition could get her to do something against the rules. Even as I listened to her, my eyes returned to Bruno. All grown up, he looked oh so fine. In the faraway light of the bonfire, his profile stood out. There was just something in the way his beard highlighted his straight nose and full lips when he wasn't looking in my direction. Except his eyes cut to me, and I liked that view even more, especially when he grinned behind his cup. The best part was getting together with everyone at Elisa's house, Ren said. How are your parents, by the way? They're great. I sipped from my own cup again and smiled at Ren. She gave us suspicious looks, still living in the same house near my college that they bought when we moved away from Laguna Island. They must have been surprised that you decided to come back. Ale hooked an arm around Daniel's arm. Apparently they were together. I think I'm surprised, too. They are, I said. They really thought my future would be outside of this small town. That's why they left with me. It's ironic that I came back, but I'm happy I did. So many people are coming back these days, Ren said. I recently heard that Adrian is coming back, too. To lead the mansion's reno. In unison, we all looked at the small island in the bay, barely visible in the night. An old stately manor rose on the rocky surface. No one lived there these days, and it remained dark. We had all seen it 1,000 times over the years. I couldn't be the only one who had a clear mental picture of it. Max bought the mansion, and he and Eva are making it into a boutique hotel. I drank the last of my beer. Adrian will be the general contractor. You'll be the architect, right? Bruno nodded in my direction. It's going to be an amazing project. Anyone want another beer? Ren began collecting our compostable cups. I'll bring more. I need to go find Pri. Ale and I gave our empty cups, but I shook my head to more beer. I'm going to go home soon. I pointedly avoided looking at Bruno. I'll have some water for now. Ren nodded and left to get beer for herself and her twin. Although there was one less person in the group, Bruno ended up closer to me somehow. So close that putting his hand on the small of my back made sense. Hey! Joel exclaimed as he and his partner Amy joined us. It feels like a third of our class is here tonight. So strange, Amy added. It feels like it's been so long, and yet... Bruno made room for Joel and Amy and invaded my space in the process. His hand moved along the curve of my back until it latched around my soft hip. A chill ran down my spine. Would you like my jacket? His gaze lit a path down my neck. This was no 18-year-old. This was a man who wasted no time telling me what he wanted and went for it. The years of maturity we carried now left no question as to what built between us. I only wore a thin printed jumpsuit, and I nodded. His smell enveloped me once the dark wine-red suede covered my shoulders. I'll go with you whenever you're ready. His hand squeezed my shoulders on top of his jacket. He spoke into my ear. I want to kiss you again. Properly. His breath caressed my sensitive skin. His words tickled down my body. I bit my lips. I like this version of you. He grinned, his teeth white against his dark beard. For the next half an hour, we pretended to be a part of the conversation. When Ren came back with Pri, we said hi and engaged. Bruno's thumb making circles on my hip. When Ale lifted an eyebrow in my direction, eyes stealing a pointed glance at Bruno's hand, I smirked and gave her a single nod. When Daniel gave us a one-liner that had us all laughing, and Bruno pulled me closer, I followed. The smell in the air changed. A hint of building rain made its way like tendrils among the ribbons of fire and smoke. A single drop fell in my nose, but I didn't get to clear it. Bruno used his free hand to flick it dry. That's how close his attention was to me. It electrified my skin. That he expressed his want so assertively. My body recognized it and wanted him right back. This was awesome, I said to the group, but I'm leaving. I don't want to risk the rain. Since when do we care about a few random drops? Joel asked. Come on. If we let rain change our plans, we'd never get anything done. Who says this isn't my plan? I quipped. I'm walking her home, Bruno added. Okay, fess up. Ale's mouth curled at the corner. This isn't about the rain, is it? All of senior year, you gazed longingly at each other. Pri hid a smile. That's what this is about, isn't it? We all stared at her. She didn't talk much. She didn't look as jumpy today as when we were in school, but for her to speak up was still novelty to all of us. It seemed she was one of those types who saw more than they shared. I didn't get a chance to respond. Somehow I'm not surprised I was that obvious. Bruno smirked. But this time, I want to do something about it. So, if you let us go without much of a fuss... We ignored their teasing as we left our friends. Bruno guided me through the different groups of people with a hand on my back until we reached the start of Main Street. I'll follow your lead, Bruno said. We'll go to Main Square and then take the short route. We walked through the principal town road, with its shops on either side, most of them dark at this time of day. Lampposts lit our way, letting us see all the small changes starting to take place in Laguna Island. I glanced at Bruno. Do you remember when we kissed? The first time? I thought it was goodbye. He gazed at the ground as we walked. Me too. I thought it would be one of those stories where I would be 80 and look back at my life and feel the full pang of regret, of nostalgia. That it would be one of those moments I would always remember and think, what if? We took several steps, stealing glances at each other. The few random drops that had fallen on us while at the beach multiplied, until a steady drizzle wet the sidewalk. I looked up to the sky. The clouds weren't visible in the night, but I kept my face up for a few seconds. Cool raindrops fell on my skin. I sighed. When I looked back at that memory, I always smiled at the relief that it wasn't in my head back then. You liked me too. In your head? He released a shocked huff. How could you have missed the signs? We were teenagers, Bruno. How could I have known what the signs were? We were only a few short blocks away from Main Square. I had such a crush on you, he said. Always so popular. Always so fun and smart. You had a million friends. That you liked me enough to hang out with my lanky, nerdy self had me ready to claim the prom king crown. I laughed. Are you saying you liked me because I was popular? No. I liked you because you were fun and smart and beautiful. The fact that you were so popular and you paid any attention to me was shocking. You weren't unpopular. You were just quiet. I still wore his jacket over my jumpsuit, and his light sweater had begun to show damp spots on his broad shoulders. He dug his hands in his jean pockets. I couldn't be quiet if I wanted to keep your attention, Bumblebee. You wanted to keep my attention? I smiled. He smirked. Always. I can admit now that I was so jealous of anyone who had it. You have my full attention again. We crossed the street to the empty central square. Patches of greenery with big trees adorned 3 of the corners, with stone paths converging at the center fountain. In the 4th corner, the old gazebo stood surrounded by flower beds, just like it did a decade before. We quickened our steps when the skies opened into heavy rain. A couple of months ago, I dreamt of Laguna Island, he said. The next day, Joel wrote to me and told me about this opportunity. I haven't stopped thinking about coming back since. It's been almost as long as I have been planning my return. We came full circle. We went our own ways on our last bonfire night. Here we are again. He grabbed my hand. I took it as a romantic gesture. The more we explored who we were, what we felt, and the reality of today, the easier it was to step into the start of something that could last. Interlocking fingers was just another step for us. The fact that he turned at the last second and led me up the steps and into the gazebo was unexpected. What are you doing? I asked. This. He pulled me to the center of the platform. I can't wait anymore. He put one hand on the back of my head, the other on my lower back, and pulled me to him. Our bodies crashed. So did our lips. The sleeves of his jacket were long for me, and only my fingertips reached far enough to touch the fabric of his sweater, but I clung to him. My nails caught on the yarn loops covering his broad chest, and I held on for dear life. The kiss changed in the next instant. As if we'd planned it, we lost ourselves in it. Rain hit the roof above us, and the smell of wet soil enveloped us. But it barely made it into my awareness. All my brain wanted to know about was his tongue on mine, the rapid shift of his chest as he breathed as fast as I did, and the roaring fire inside that begged for more. He kissed me like he'd been waiting for too long, and I kissed him back with equal fervor. He pulled me closer, and I dug into the plush material under my fingertips, grabbing onto flesh. All those years watching you from afar. He rested his forehead on mine, regretting that we had missed our chance, but here we are. We're going to be here for long enough to finally see what happens next. Next? This evening? He kissed my temple, my cheekbone, my cheek. I would have never dreamed of being this forward at 18. We'll walk to my place in the rain. And you'll let me in, maybe. And we'll wait for the rain to pass. It would make more sense to put your clothes in the wash and let you stay. He smiled. I think it'll make the most sense. I took his hand and pulled him toward the direction of my apartment. Let's go. People will be leaving the beach and everyone will be walking home. 4. Bruno. Elisa opened the door to her place and let me in. She took off my jacket and hung it from a hook near the door. The rain had only intensified since we'd left the plaza, and tendrils were plastered to her face. She ran her fingers through her hair to fix it at the same time I did. There were only 2 4-story apartment buildings in Laguna Island, both mirroring each other across a yard. My apartment was in the other building. It wasn't surprising we were living so close. These buildings had been claimed by the young people in town, especially those of us returning. Do you want to take off your sweater? She asked. We can hang it to dry. I took it off and hung it next to my jacket. My shoulders were wet with rain, but I kept my shirt on. She walked into the living room. Her place had the same setup as mine. The door opened to a small sitting area, separated from the kitchen with a small 4-place table. There was no kitchen island, but counters and shelves lining the walls. On one side of the long wall, a big window overlooked the central yard of the community. On the other, 2 doors, one leading to the bathroom and the other to her bedroom. That's where my eyes locked. The door was ajar, and a slice of her room enticed me in. I gazed in her direction. She stared at me with a smirk and a raised eyebrow. You talked about being forward, she said. How forward were you planning to be? As forward as you'll allow. I took a step closer to her. I don't want to scare you off. She bit her lip and took a handful of my shirt in her hand. What are you planning on doing? To know if I should be scared. I put my hands on her waist and grabbed hard. With a single step, I got close enough to her for our bodies to touch. I kissed her cheek. Whatever comes to mind. Maybe start by asking you to undress for me. Okay, so far that's good. Then I'll find the best way to use my tongue on you. I spoke to her ear, then nibbled on the soft skin of her neck. You know, nothing too bad. She pulled me, so we took a step closer to her bedroom together. Oh, well, yes, that's good too. Do you want to know more? Or do you want me to surprise you? I'm surprised you seem so vocal. You used to be quiet, remember? More steps toward her bedroom. I'm not quiet anymore, if you like it. I pushed the door to her room open with a hand. I can speak up more. Tell you how I want to touch you. Get to know your body and fulfill every fantasy with you. Do all of the things I learned since I last saw you, when the thought of doing them with you was nothing but regret that we'd never get to. I sat on the end of her bed, with her between my legs. Now we don't need to regret it. She smiled and put her hands on my shoulders. Now it's just what we learned and get to show each other. I undid her belt. It took only seeing you again, having you within distance to erase the time apart. I threw the belt to the floor, then took off my shirt. Unfazed by the way her eyes roamed over my torso, I rested my weight on my hands, flat on the mattress behind me. A spark of curiosity shone in her eyes, and she bit her lip as her gaze landed on my hard cock trapped in denim. Undress for me, Bumblebee. She brought her fingers to her collar, where she began unbuttoning her jumpsuit. Did you ever think you'd get to tell me that? Her lips curled at the corners. And that I would listen? I licked my bottom lip. All that makes me want to do is test how far I can take it. Neither of us had turned on the lights, and the room was only illuminated by streetlight filtering through the blinds. Her fingers continued to work down her torso. and I tracked every single movement of her hands. With the last button now undone, she lifted her arms until she could hook her fingers in the cloth still covering her shoulders. She stopped before pulling the printed material away. I lifted my eyes to hers, and maybe it was impossible, but I could have sworn I could feel my pupils dilate. "Relax, Tiger," she said. "We'll have time to test all our limits. Neither of us is disappearing again." She pulled the fabric on her shoulders and unwrapped the jumpsuit off her body. Bending down from her waist, she undressed until she could stand upright again in nothing but the sexiest lingerie I had ever seen. The set seemed handcrafted. At any other time, I would have touched, researched, asked. But all I could do was groan. Thin black mesh hugged her breasts and hips. Lacy details decorated every edge. All over the garments, embroidered flowers in shades of red, pink, and purple drew my eyes. None of it covered her nipples, hard and visible behind the mesh. She stood, proudly displaying herself to me, her soft body creating swells and dips and hills all over. Elisa smiled at my evident reaction. I didn't hide it. She could take pride in my furrowing eyebrow, the way my teeth dug into my lips, or how my fingers clutched at her duvet. Be as cocky as you want. My jaw clenched. I'm enjoying the fact you were ready for this. For us, tonight. Out of my want for her, I leaned forward and ran my fingertips over her stomach, grinning at the goose flesh that appeared in the wake of my hand. With my eyes locked on hers, I hooked a finger in her underwear and pulled her to me. She sat on my lap, her sex on my hard-on. I kissed her clavicles, her neck, her shoulder, as my hands rounded her hips and grabbed handfuls of her ass. "Kiss me," she said. "Give me more." A smile took over me as I lifted my mouth to her. I licked her bottom lip, bit it gently, guided her to circle my fully dressed hips. With only a flimsy piece of cloth protecting her, she'd feel the roughness of the denim covering me. I kissed her and surrounded her waist with my arms, bringing her as close to me as I could. Tongue against tongue, she mocked the movements of her riding me. She moaned. My heart raced ahead, ready to take over and take her. I want this. I held onto the plush rounds of her hips, half following, half leading the way she moved on me. I want you. Do you want it too? She sucked on my lip. I want you more than ever. Her hands dove between us. She undid my belt buckle with rushed fingers and worked just as fast on the button and zipper. Before she could do more, I scooted back and threw myself onto the bed. I pulled her hand for her to follow, and she landed on me. I turned us around and kissed her down her neck, on her breasts. I want to keep your bra on for a while longer. I flicked a nipple through the mesh. It puckered further. I sucked on it. It's too sexy to get rid of so soon. But I kissed her stomach, then her lower belly, lower. I rubbed my nose on her mound, committing the texture of her underwear to memory. We can get rid of this. I pulled her panties down. Her underwear fell silently on the floor. I stood by the feet of the bed and took my wallet out of my back pocket. The condom I'd put there earlier in the day landed somewhere near her on the bed. I took off my pants and underwear and reached for her legs. This is how I'll do it. I pulled her to the edge. I want to kneel before you as I eat you out. Greedy, she shimmied her hips until they were in the right position. Her eyes roamed all over my body. She got to know me with her eyes, while I moved ahead and got to know her with my mouth. I kneeled, my cock hard and reaching for her, but I ignored it. With a soft caress, I ran fingertips down her labia. She lifted herself with elbows on the mattress. I want to see you. A small grin took over my face. I arched an eyebrow her way. Watch me worship your pussy, Bumblebee. I grabbed handfuls of her thighs and opened her up to me. The kiss I gave her labia had us moaning at the same time. My tongue made a pass over her lips, and I pushed in until I found her clit. I worked it with flicks. I nibbled on the plush flesh. Elisa's breathing became hectic. Its slight raspiness, music to my ears. A hum escaped my lips. My hands left her thighs, so I could use my fingers to open her pussy up for me. I sucked and lapped at her clit, before teasing her entrance with 2 fingers. "Bruno, I didn't expect... she sighed. She dropped on the bed and I smiled against her. I pushed 2 fingers inside, slowly and tormenting. Maybe this is why we needed time to be apart. I rubbed the top warm, slick wall wrapping around my fingers. I needed time to learn how to impress you. "You're trying to impress me?" She rolled her hips, seeking more friction from me. I rubbed her clit with my free thumb. "I want to prove any fantasy you had of me true." Her hands fisted the duvet, and her neck arched back as she pushed her head into the bed. "Did you have any fantasies of me?" I bit my lip. "Tell me as I devour you." When I got that notification of you liking my picture, I checked your profile." I put my lips to her again, my fingers still inside her. "Go on," I said. "Intoxicate me with your thoughts of me." "Your profile picture? You didn't have a beard yet, but..." She moaned. "But you looked older. Serious, sexy." I sucked on her clit and she hiccuped. "You had, like, a picture of a trip you did to Colombia and other random ones like that." "Keep talking." I wrapped one hand around my cock. "Did you wonder if I was single? Did you fantasize about us meeting again and falling into bed together?" "Bruno, I want you inside." I worked my fingers harder in her pussy and hooked them to add pressure. "I'm inside." "Fuck. You know what I mean. I want your cock. You on top of me, just like I imagined." "Tell me what you imagined." "There was a picture of you smiling at the camera. At a restaurant at the beach. I wondered who'd taken it. And I pretended it was me." I fisted my cock harder and pumped a few more times. "Talk to me. Give me your thoughts, your fantasies. All the things you've learned and craved through the years." She whimpered and grabbed at my hair with her hands. "I imagined you and I were on vacation together. After dinner, we went back to our hotel room and did pretty much this." She pulled at my hair and I followed. I fell forward on top of her, my feet still on the floor. She brought me to her lips and I kissed her, deep. I sucked on her bottom lip. "Did you touch yourself while thinking of me?" "Every night for a week. Me and my vibrator thinking of you. Too chicken shit to reach out." I smiled and kissed her jaw, her neck. I gave her a side look and searched for the condom on the bed. "It's okay." I stood at the feet of the bed again and opened the foil square. I wasn't any braver. Found 1,000 excuses. Elisa moved back on the bed, her eyes on my hands and my cock. I stroked myself a couple of times. She bit her lip and our eyes locked, air caught in my lungs. I rolled the condom on. "We don't need any excuses now. We can jump right in, throw ourselves into it like we couldn't have before." I crawled on the bed to her, finding my place between her thighs. She smiled and ran her hands over my shoulders, my chest, and finally latched on my waist. "I feel like a teen again," I whispered, eager and a bit desperate, hoping you feel the same way I do. "Crossing my fingers you'll be my everything. We might still be everything to each other." Her voice, soft and warm, trickled down my back. My heart beat hard and fast. Want shone in her eyes, and a soft, darker hue bloomed on her cheeks. "You're looking at me like you've fantasized about me too," she said. I positioned myself at the right place and pushed. One roll of my hips, moans out of both of our throats, and we were one. Like I had imagined every night for months back in high school. Like I pictured on lonely nights, feeling haunted by what hadn't been. "I dreamed of you, Elisa. The first roll of my hips was restrained. You're a vision in my arms. I thrust into her. She gasped, and her nails dug into my flesh. I slid out until I almost left her, then pushed in again. More, she kissed me. Make me feel your want. I groaned and quickened my pace. I fucked her like I could fuse myself to her. Like with every frantic pump, we could erase 1 second we were apart. Like all those years were a test, only so we could meet again and forget we ever thought we wouldn't be together. I breathed in her moans. I studied the sounds she made and learned them. A shift in the tilt of my hips had her jolting, and I grunted, determined to keep the pace and the angle. Do you like that, Elisa? She panted. Yes, more. You want me fucking you faster? I sped up. She huffed out a whine. Beads of sweat cooled on my temples, but heat fueled my insides. Fire where the embers of what I had felt for her lived. Harder, I groaned, until I get to know how you look when you come. I'm close. Look at me. Her eyelids fluttered open. Her gaze locked with mine, and in the dim light of the room, we blended into one. A single wave of movement as she met the relentless rhythm of my hips. And her sighs and moans were my own. And the chase to our climax built inseparably from the other. My heart melted and spilled into hers. Our bond now, an allied, soft, warm material. Bruno, Elisa. Rippling shockwaves moved through me. The same happened to her as she buckled under me, clenching around me. Every thought disappeared into white noise. I lost sense of myself, and there was only us, together, at last. I came back to myself, barely able to hold myself off her. I'd almost melted into her, crushing her. In my arms, she'd fully dissolved into the mattress. A blissful look weighed down her eyelids and curled the corners of her lips. I'm impressed, she said. Good job, us. I chuckled and rolled off her. Just give me a sec, I'll come up with a witty reply in a bit. She smiled and found a place next to me. Her head lay on my shoulder, and I wrapped an arm around her. It's okay, she said. We have time. Those words engraved themselves into my mind as I fell asleep with Elisa in my arms, on her bed for the first time. For years to come, it would be the last thought I had every night. And every day, we made the most out of our second chance. This has been Now Us Again by Leonor Soliz, read for you by Ramona Master.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, lady listeners. Thank you so much to Leonor Soliz for bringing us Now Us Again. It's just, I love these kind of stories. I love like second chance romances when it comes to like young love, you know, where it's like, oh, your first young love. I love that they've got a chance to come back together and again. So let me see. What else have we got up next week? Oh, let me check before I forget. Oh, we have Jenna Kent with Secret Admirer. Super excited to have her on the podcast with us. So yeah, we've got her. And then after that, we've got Cassie Mint and then Rochelle Page. Yay. I know our homegirl's coming back. So yeah, make sure you come back and check out everything below. And that's it. Rate, review, and subscribe. God, that's enough,
what
right?
to do.
Fuck your day up. Make today your bitch. Don't be a dick.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Read me romance. Read me romance.